morning, spoke for almost 45 minutes. He tried to link up his father's life with Vivekananda's life and teachings itself. Both of them passed on before the age of 40, as you know, but their teachings and legacy lives on. This conference has been organized by the Washington Kali Temple and the Institute of World Religions. If you have gone to the temple, you might have seen that there is a big sign that says Interfaith Center. That was the purpose of our building the temple. And we want to move on and carry on the mission and vision that we laid out when we started the temple. And when we talk about this interfaith movement, and we claim and we said yesterday that we are restarting this interfaith movement beginning last night with the 150th birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. I do not need to explain the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, but he was such a visionary. At the age of 31, he came to Chicago to the Parliament of World Religions, and he talked about human dignity, tolerance, peace, empowering women, and other social issues. And in the course of time, a lot of those values, they got lost. And an interfaith movement has been started in the 60s. Now it is more of a sometimes localized level, regional level, national level. And with the advent of online and technology, and we can make this movement even much stronger. That is the purpose of this. So this morning we are going to start with the theme of Swami Vivekananda's teachings, and I'm going to introduce the moderator of this session, Dr. Ramesh Rao. He is a professor of communication studies at Longwood University, and he is also the human rights coordinator for the Hindu American Foundation. And Hindu American Foundation is one of the co-sponsors of this conference also. In addition to that, we have over here Justice Shamal Sen came from India. He was also the governor of West Bengal. Swami Atma Gyanananda Ji, and I call him Stuart Maharaj, such a dedicated and follower of Swamiji. And Dr. Jeffrey Long, a long time follower and devotee of the Washington Kali Temple and an expert in Vedanta philosophy. And also Mural Bhai, he is the head of the Adapit. So we have got together a nice plan for you. And Dr. Ramesh Rao is going to take over and conduct this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. Good morning, Namaste, Suprabhatam. I have the privilege, honor of introducing distinguished speakers on this morning's panel. Each speaker has about 10 minutes. I may extend moderator's privilege an additional 2 minutes. I will be making the peace sign, and the speakers should know that that means they have 2 minutes left. We would like to have a good question-answer session at the end of the presentations. And so if we can wind up the formal presentations, leaving about 20 to 30 minutes for the question-answer session, I think we would all enjoy this morning's session better. Let me go ahead and introduce our first speaker, the distinguished Justice Shamal Sen. Justice Sen was a former governor of the state of West Bengal. He also served in several other judicial positions, including in the state high courts of West Bengal and the state of Uttar Pradesh, where he also served as the Chief Justice of the High Court. Justice Sen headed for 5 years the Human Rights Commission of the state of West Bengal. Today, he will be speaking on Swami Vivekananda as a pioneer in interfaith dialogue. Justice Sen.
Dr. Pradeep Ghosh, Chairman of the Organizing Committee of World Religious Conference, Swami Atmagyanananda Ji Maharaj of Washington DC Mission, Dr. Jeffrey Long, Brahmachari Moral Bhai, General Secretary cum Trustee of Dakshineshwar Ramakrishna Sangha Adyapit, and our moderator, Dr. Sharmaji, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have been informed that I shall have to speak Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, a pioneer in interfaith dialogue. Swami Vivekananda, in his Chicago address, said, "Sisters and brothers of America," I shall say, that created a situation. All of them became excited. But I think I should speak as sisters and brothers generally of the world. Our faith, civilization, is as old as the civilization itself. And we have the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, whole universe is one, and whoever belongs to this universe, they are our very close relation. We welcome everyone in the world. You may be thinking why I am referring to this. Because interfaith dialogue, Swami Vivekananda is really the pioneer. In the Chicago conference, he said, all religions are great, and the fundamental goal is one. Roads may be different, needs may be different, end is one. Love for humanity, compassion, fellow feeling, and do good to the humanity at large. That is the main thing. And one who says that his own religion is supreme is only still confined to narrow ideas. We have a very broad outlook, he said. And this he learned from his spiritual teacher, Sri Ramakrishna Dev, who devoted himself and in the process of learning, and he imbibed his soul and heart to make himself in that very culture of all the other religions. He practiced the faith of Islam and followed strictly the Islamic ideals. He devoted himself to the Christian ideals, Christian practice, and he became so devoted that he became one with Jesus. And one day he found Jesus came and marched with him. Such was his great teacher, and I know, because I live very near to the residence. In front of my house is Balaram Bose's house. I don't know if all of you know about Balaram Bose. Today it has been named as Balaram Mandir under Ramakrishna Mission. And there Ramakrishna Mission was founded. Swami Vivekananda took the initiative. He was present. Sri Sri Sarodama was also present at that place when Ramakrishna Mission was founded, and they were founded at that place. Maharajji must be knowing it. And I was told that Ramakrishna Dev used to come and stay there and used to visit that place very frequently. Although more than 100 times he visited that place. Maharajji is ratifying what my speech. Otherwise you may have thought, maybe thinking, how could 100 times? He must be speaking the wrong thing to us. Maharajji says, no, he's ratifying, I'm privileged. So, and Swamiji's residence is within 1 kilometer from my place. So I consider myself very fortunate that I have been invited to address the gathering here, and I consider it a great privilege to be associated with this program as a speaker. Moderator has shown his signal, but there are many things to be said. What can I do? I should complete and follow his dictates. I only say that all roads lead to Rome, or all roads lead to Washington, DC. You may come from any place. My delegate from Afghanistan, the great lady was sitting by my side in the morning meeting called by moderator. And she came from Afghanistan to California and then to Washington, DC. I came from Kolkata to Dubai and came here to Washington, DC. So goal is same, but means are different. So all religions lead to same goal. Our purpose should be to have self-realization, realization of God Almighty. And one may approach it from any angle. But in the name of religion, all wrong things are going on. I was inquiring from that great lady. We are coming from a very great place, Afghanistan. Is there any clash now? She said, yes, clash is going on, minor clashes. I said, what could be the reason of the clash? Is it religion? she very nicely answers, no, it is not religion, but the misuse of religion is the cause. So, misuse of religion has to be stopped, and interfaith preachings, which Swamiji gave in his address at Chicago, he said, we have respect for all religions, all ideas, tolerance. What is required is tolerance. We have a right to disagree, but that does not mean that we shall have to show disrespect to you. I have highest respect, for example, maybe with Mural Bhai or Dr. Ghosh, but that does not mean that whatever they say, I shall have to follow. I may on some points differ with them. It is right to disagree, but we must have respect for their views also. Each one's view is great. This universal tolerance which Swamiji preached, that is to be inculcated in the minds of the people throughout the universe. And I believe the organizers have made an attempt for this same, so that they invited people from different countries, from Afghanistan, from Kolkata, from various countries. People have come so that there can be a synthesis of the views. And synthesis, culture of synthesis, which is most important. And this we have our great tradition, heritage, and we should try to follow. Mankind is great, and therefore we should try to establish peace. Swami Vivekananda said, there should not be conflict, but there should be assimilation, conciliation, and peace. The question arises whether peace will be there, whether humanity will survive or not. The whole world is in turmoil. Therefore, this conference can play a very important role in inculcating that sense, which may imbibe a thinking for peace in a new way. Thank you all.
Before I introduce the next speaker, I just want to remind you that after the second speaker is done, we will be distributing some cards on which you can note your questions. And we'll be doing that again after the fourth speaker finishes his presentation. We will be collecting those questions, and we'll be choosing those questions from those questions, and our panelists will be answering that. My privilege again to introduce our next distinguished speaker, Swami Atmagnanananda. Swami Atmagnanananda is a monk of the Ramakrishna order, which he joined in 1981. He has been serving the Ramakrishna Vedanta Society in the United States in various positions over the past years. In 1997, he was transferred to the Vedanta Center for Greater Washington, D.C. area, and has been leading the center. He's done scholarly studies in Indian philosophy, and he has traveled extensively throughout the world, and of course India and Bangladesh. He has published various articles and translations of books of the Ramakrishna order. Swami Atmagnanananda Maharaj is in a unique position today to discuss the life of Swami Vivekananda, both from a historical perspective as well as a spiritual one. Swami Atmagnananda.
First, I'd like to offer my thanks to all of the organizers, Pratita, and all of the others, and thanks to our moderator, Dr. Rao, and all of our distinguished speakers. This is a great privilege and a great honor to be able to say a few words about Swami Vivekananda. I've been given an interesting topic and a short amount of time to address it, so I'll do my best. This topic I've been given is to say something about the life of Swami Vivekananda, as well as the influence that he has had both in the East and the West, and from the time of his life to the present time today. I would like to start out by speaking of Swamiji, putting everything in a little historical perspective, because he was born in a very interesting time in a very interesting place. And I say that because Calcutta in those days was the capital of India, the British Raj, and it was a hotbed of free thinking and influence from the West. Swamiji was part of what they called Young Bengal, a very brilliant young student who studied extensively Western philosophy and literature and religion, as well as knowing very well his own tradition. This was a period when many of the young people of Bengal were enchanted by the oratory of Keshav Chandra Sen, who was the head of the Brahmo Samaj, a very important, we could say, reform movement of the day. And this movement incorporated much of traditional Hinduism with the Upanishads, based on the Upanishads and everything, but also was very much influenced by some Western ideas. And because of that, and because of the opinion of the British, that the British had of Hinduism, there were many aspects of traditional Hinduism that were looked down upon, not only by the British, but among the educated Bengalis of that period. So this reform movement was very much against what they called image worship, idolatry. There were many aspects of social issues, child marriage and widows and all sorts of things. Members even had to sign a pledge that they would not enter into a temple and bow down before the deity. So this is the young man, this Swami Vivekananda, who was then known as Narendranath Datta, born in 1863. And this young man, though he was part of this very westernized movement, also had a tremendous longing for God realization in the traditional sense. And from a very young age, he was given to meditation, very introspective, and he had a habit of going from place to place, seeking out these very great, renowned souls and asking them, "Sir, have you seen God?" And he was always disappointed. He even went to the great Devendranath Tagore, Rabindranath's father, and asked, "Sir, have you seen God?" And it wasn't until he went, of course, to Sri Ramakrishna that everything was fulfilled and everything changed. This is brilliant, young, Western-educated college student meeting this semi-literate, poor, simple Brahmin priest from the village. And because of that meeting, Swamiji's whole life was changed. Now, who was this young Narendranath, who later became Swami Vivekananda, whom we call Swamiji? Sri Ramakrishna had some insights, of course. As soon as he saw him, he recognized his greatness. And he very often embarrassed the young Narendra by praising him in front of others. Even this Keshav that was practically worshipped by the young men, women also of Bengal, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if Keshav has 1/16 of the spiritual powers, then Narendra has all 16 parts. So he understood the greatness of Swamiji. He recognized him and knew that he would do great things in the world, that he would spread the great teachings of Vedanta and the liberal teachings of Sri Ramakrishna throughout the East and the West both. Now we know when Sri Ramakrishna first met Narendra, he went into an ecstatic mood and he addressed him as Nara. Nara is the name of a great sage in India. And he at that time said, I know who you are, I know that you've been born to do great things in this world. And to me, the fact that he referred to him as Nara, of course his name was Narendra, which forms part of the word, but Nara has another meaning. Nara and Narayana, together, this is a conception of God, both as that transcendent infinite reality and God manifest as man. So this idea of Nara, to me, represents more than simply a great sage who lived in the past, but Swami Vivekananda was in a sense the embodiment of man, meaning humankind, men and women together. Of course, when we use this term man, we get in trouble nowadays, but in those days, this was a very common thing. So to me, this is very significant that Swamiji had this tremendous love of humankind. He was heard to say one time in San Francisco, "It may be that I'll have to be reborn again. You see, I've fallen in love with man." And we know that for him, this service of mankind was equivalent to worship of God. This was one of the great teachings that we find, that Shiva Gyane, Jiva Seva. In order, worshiping Jiva, worshiping living souls with the knowledge and understanding and faith that this is God himself who comes in that form. Swamiji wrote many beautiful poems, in fact, on this theme. I'd like to read a small portion of one of his most powerful poems. This is found in a letter written to Miss Mary Hale. "He who is in you and is outside of you, who works through every hand, who walks through every foot, whose body you are, him worship and break all other idols. He who is the high and the low, the saint and the sinner, the God and the worm, him worship, the visible, the knowable, the real, the omnipresent, break all other idols, in whom there is neither past life nor future birth, nor death, nor going or coming, in whom we always have been and always will be one. Him worship, break all other idols. Ah, fools, neglecting the living gods and his infinite reflection with which the world is full, and running after imaginary shadows. Him worship, the only visible, and break all other idols." So Swamiji had this tremendous love for all of humankind, but he also had a special teaching. This was to see the special manifestation of God in the poor and the downtrodden, which he called Daridra Narayana. And it was especially service to them that he felt was the highest type of worship of God. Now there's another way to look at, or to answer this question, who was Swami Vivekananda? Two minutes. Okay. And this is something that came from his own lips. Swamiji used to talk about the ideal person. The ideal person to him was a combination of the intellect of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was the greatest philosopher in India, a brilliant intellect, and the heart of Buddha, this great compassion. So Swamiji stressed this idea, and really he was talking about himself. Not that he was trying to talk about himself, but that's the perfect description of him. We don't find another soul, I haven't found another soul, that had such a highly developed intellect and such a tremendously soft and compassionate heart as Swamiji. Now let me get to the contributions. They were equally great in the East and in the West. In India, Swamiji's main goal was to awaken the country which he felt was asleep, in the sleep of Thomas. This was really his main goal. We find that he went throughout the country from the south to the north and constantly uttered the same "arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." We find in the complete works a minimum of 25 times when he used this phrase, "arise, awake," with some different endings, but this was what he wanted to do. He wanted to awaken the countrymen of India from this sleep with tamas, which was masquerading as sattva. That meant that people felt that they were kind and sweet and gentle and nice, when really they had nothing, no grit. So he wanted to awaken that, to awaken them to this life of service. That was the other thing. He wanted to see people take responsibility for others in the country, to work for the welfare of others, to look upon the poor in India as their burden and their responsibility, to help them in that way. So we can say, in a sense, that what we see, the awakened giant of India, really we can trace back to Swamiji, even from the point of view of the freedom and independence of India. I would say that Swamiji was equally as important with regard to the independence and freedom of India as Gandhiji himself. That he was the one who inspired the country. All of the young men who were the freedom fighters in those days were found to carry copies of Swamiji's letters and writings. And the British thought that Swamiji must be some revolutionary. They didn't know that he actually didn't want people to get the Ramakrishna order to get too involved in politics. But he had this desire to instill this idea of freedom on all levels, spiritual of course, but also social and political freedom. So this was also one of the great contributions of Swamiji. Now in the West, his contribution was a little bit different, because he came here with a view to forming some kind of partnership between East and West. He wanted some help to come from the West, and he wanted to be able to do something for this country also. And he found that whereas in India people were asleep with tamas, here everyone was mad with rajas and materialism. So he felt his goal here was to spread this message, to go deep within, to find the glory of the self within. And of course the second great message had to do with this universal outlook, to see that we're all worshiping the same God, we're all trying to strive for the same ultimate realization of truth, to show there's no contradiction between the religions, no contradiction between religion and science, and to show this oneness. So we can say in this country this idea of harmony of religions was extremely important. And I'll close just with one final quotation. This was something Swamiji said at a lecture delivered in California in 1900, The Way to the Realization of a Universal Religion. Our watchword then will be acceptance and not exclusion, not only toleration, for so-called toleration is often blasphemy, and I do not believe in it. I believe in acceptance. Why should I tolerate? Toleration means that I think that you are wrong, and I am just allowing you to live. Is it not a blasphemy to think that you and I are allowing others to live? I accept all religions that were in the past and worship with them all. I worship God with every one of them, in whatever form they worship Him. I shall go to the mosque of the Mohammedan. I shall enter the Christian's church and kneel before the crucifix. I shall enter the Buddhistic temple, where I shall take refuge in Buddha and in his law. I shall go into the forest and sit down in meditation with the Hindu, who is trying to see the light which enlightens the heart of everyone. Not only shall I do all these, but I shall keep my heart open for all that may come in the future. Is God's book finished? Or is it still a continuous revelation going on? It is a marvelous book, these spiritual revelations of the world, the Bible, the Vedas, the Quran, and all other sacred books are but so many pages, and an infinite number of pages remain yet to be unfolded. I would leave it open for all of them. We stand in the present, but open ourselves to the infinite future. We take in all that has been in the past, enjoy the light of the present, and open every window of the heart for all that will come in the future. Salutation to all the prophets of the past, to all the great ones of the present, and to all that are to come in the future. Thank you.